Good evening, friends. The operational situation at the front by the end of the 6th of February. Let's analyze, that is, only the main points on the front. These are the Lyman direction, the AVDEEVKA direction, and the South Donetsk direction. Let's start with the Limansky-Terny-Yampollovka, which means that by the evening, information is received directly from the fighters, including the sniper commented on the situation in this sector of the front. This means that the situation remains difficult. The enemy continues to attack with the support of armored vehicles. That is what we said, that they are pulling it up. Not only will they work with infantry on this sector of the front, but actually active hostilities continue. By the evening, we do not record any new changes. For the most part, we managed to repel attacks according to reports directly from the fighters from the field, but at the same time, it is necessary to add that these attacks continue. That is, naturally new roles are expected by night and by morning. Given that now we have the main fighting again in the area of ravines or yars, it means that they are attacking not only in the area of Yar Laptev in its western part, but also from Yar Laptev to the near Yar, that is in the southern direction of the attack, in order to increase pressure both from the south and from the north, in a southerly direction to the north part of the ledge. Therefore, very heavy fighting is going on, but in principle it should be added here, that there is some activity of Russian troops, also on the far Yar, near its outskirts, that is, not only from south to north. Russian troops attacked the southern part of the near Yar, but the far Yar was also attacked. It was possible to repel these attacks, but based on the attack vector, based on what forces the enemy is transferring, it will definitely attack this area in the near future. Well, I repeat, there are already attacks on the near Yar, from Yar Laptev. In other words, the situation is quite complicated. Difficult remains in this sector of the front. We do not record any changes in the Bakhmut direction. We were asked to comment on Bologorovka, as a number of Russian military officers made a statement about the partial success of the enemy, about the fact that there is progress. Look, the main fighting we continue within the gray zone, in the area of our industrial zone, as well as to the east. Attempts are being made from Bologorovka itself and northeast of the industrial zone by Russian troops, so we continue active hostilities. It's too early to talk about anything now, because there are active battles going on. In the Bakhmut direction, the main military operations within the gray zone remain between the Ivanovo-Kleshivka. The greatest pressure remains there. Again, Russian troops attack within the gray zone, but periodically approach on the outskirts of the Ivanovo, that is, they are still trying to find a gap in the defense and re-enter the most populated area, to catch on and gain a foothold on its near approaches and already in the settlement itself. By the evening, by the end of the day, it is possible to repel these attacks, but again the enemy continues to assault on this sector of the front. In the AVDEEVKA direction, it remains the hottest for us. There is a lot of news. A lot of contradictory news from this section of the front is coming, including official ones, by the evening, that a number of officials report that there are no urban battles, while Russian military personnel are publishing footage. And we are with them, and on previous broadcasts, it was analyzed that, in principle, urban battles are going on because, well, the enemy is in the city limits. There is such a moment. What's going on now? The main pressure we have, if we are talking about the northern flank, is on the Garden Partnership, that is, attacks between the Garden Partnership and the Cascade of Stakes. The main fighting reportedly goes along the 1st and 2nd streets on their outskirts. It is clear that these are narrow streets. This is just a Garden Partnership, but basements are important for the Russian troops here, which would allow them to gain a foothold and, accordingly, further pull up additional forces. Therefore, they attack within the gray zone, and in the direction of Chistyakov Street. There is a lot of contradictory information today, as you see and may have read, heard, judging by your questions that you asked. It means that they are breaking through to the industrial avenue and so on. A lot of things do not correspond to reality, but you should understand that, in addition to the fact that active hostilities are taking place on the outskirts of AVDEEVKA and in AVDEEVKA itself north-south, the enemy is also waging an information war, and it is very important for him to submit this information, that they have breakthroughs and so on, in order to undermine the morale of our defense forces fighters. Therefore, this point is clear. But judging by the statements made by Butusev, among others, of course, the picture in AVDEEVKA itself in the cinema is not the best now, because, for example, there are reports that Russian troops pulled up a number of forces that were in the rear before, and to AVDEEVKA, and increased pressure with assault groups. The number of assault groups has approximately doubled. This is very much. In other words, what did the enemy do? He found some gap, and having already entered, clinging to the section of Sapernev and Lacey Ukrainka streets, as well as Zheleznodorozhny Lane, he naturally continues his assault actions, in order to gain a foothold in the urban development of low-rise buildings of the private sector. But the most important thing, I repeat, is the basements, so he only increases the pressure. Naturally, all necessary measures are being taken by the defense forces. I think within 24 hours, if we are talking about the north and the northern flank, there will already be a clearer picture emerging from what is happening now, active hostilities. So he named the 1st-2nd Street. There are also attempts to enter the Garden Partnership from the north, from the landing by the Russian troops. The defense forces repulsed most of the attacks during the day, but again we will state that this information, we had it a few hours ago, from the fighters themselves, which they comment on periodically, so it is difficult to say what is happening there now, taking into account the situation that has developed. As for the sandpit, here we will talk about 2 points. First, it is natural that, first of all, it is necessary to consider it from another angle. The forces that the Russian troops had previously concentrated in the landing at the beam, in the forest belt, and therefore descended along 2 forest belts, they are naturally now directed to AVDEEVKA. In other words, here it is necessary to understand that the enemy is increasing pressure due to the fact that the front line has been reduced in this section of the fountain, and it is clear that the sandpit here, the natural border so to speak, now serves as protection from a flank attack. Therefore, it is natural that the pressure increases. It is getting stronger much to the south and southeast of the AVDEEVKA Garden Association. In other words, they are not only pushing in the direction of Industrial Street, but also in this direction, that is, go to the western outskirts, approach the western outskirts of the sandpit itself, and take a number of positions in the basements. The second point is that the pressure on the AVDEEVKA landfill is increasing. The second landfill we have is located in this area, and naturally Russian troops are probing the defense now, and both on the Avdiivsky landfill itself, and there are attempts to advance to the Willow Garden Association, located east of the Avdiivsky landfill, but today we will state this as the activity of the DUR, because there are a number of points that naturally did not give if the Russian troops could gain a foothold. Due to the fact that the APU can strike from 2 flanks, there is such a moment, but still do not forget that there is information that the enemy is pulling up reserves now, which as they say were up to 40 kilometers deep directly from the ground, yes, from the front line. Therefore, naturally, this is primarily due to increasing pressure on AVDEEVKA itself, as soon as possible. These are the news we have for tonight, on the northern flank and the north of AVDEEVKA. There is a lot of misinformation, so I will just say that it is better to submit certain information late, but not in a hurry, because there are a lot of contradictory moments going on. As for the south, there was no new information that Russian troops had a partial success along Sportivnaya Chernyshevsky and Sobornaya streets, but nevertheless they are present along these streets, in the central and southern parts of them. As for the situation where you counterattacked with the support of the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, the situation is without any changes. Along Chernyshevsky streets, without any changes, as in the area of the Tsarskaya Okhota complex. Active fighting continues in this sector of the front. There are still a number of statements from the enemy, but in the context of 24 hours and in terms of the fact that I did not comment on them yesterday, because they turned out to be disinformation. There were reports that the Garden Association allegedly managed to advance from the steep beam area to enter its territory and move northward north of the sand pit, that is, by planting, but there were a lot of throw-ins. So it's better to wait for some pause and submit more reliable information, because now it's very much the information war for this sector of the front is working. There were also reports from Opite that these messages were submitted by Russian military officers and Russian media personalities, with the fact that the information for clarification that they occupied attacking from Opite in the northeastern direction, a number of dominant heights as far as it corresponds to reality. And so it really is, but there were no reports about the occupation of the dominant heights at all. That is, the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine is held in this area to the northeast. Moreover, a number of attacks were repulsed, which were from the experienced in the eastern direction from the enemy, so we do not record any changes. But, in the near future, it is necessary to tell the truth, taking into account the information that the enemy is pulling up forces. It is expected, of course, that he will increase the pressure. Naturally, the AFU is taking all necessary measures to stabilize the situation in this sector of the front. Active hostilities continue. And I will comment on the South Donetsk direction, on the statements that come in during the day, disinformation, and in general, a number of Russian military themselves expose Russian disinformation. First of all, it is that they allegedly managed to break through to the center of Novomikhailovka. This does not correspond to reality. This is the first moment, because a number of Russian military have stated that the APU has just prepared for the fact that there will be a frontal assault on Novomikhailovka. They complain about those holes. What we said on previous broadcasts, that when they enter, Russian troops are in certain positions. It turns out that now from two directions, that is, the AFU is striking head-on from the rear, so counterattacks. Therefore, there are already a number of failures, which are stated directly by the Russian military themselves. Basically, on the previous broadcast, I made a clipping to you with their telegram, what they report. And we do not record any new changes, but the pressure from the enemy is also high enough, because he was preparing, and he had two options to make an attempt. It means to go north and south of Novomikhailovka, and break through as close as possible to the Konstantinovka-Novomikhailovka supply road, and accordingly the Garden Association machine builder from the fortified area in the southwest direction, which would also allow taking a section of the road under partial fire control or continue the assault actions head-on. It means that they made a decision based on the fact that the APU can naturally attack with drones, and it will all fail, because they had an unsuccessful offensive in the northeastern part of Georgievka before that, which we analyzed according to geolinking. Tanks and armored vehicles were destroyed there, so it was decided not to attack in open fields. From the same to undertake an attack, roughly speaking, head-on in the eastern-southeastern locality. But it's also not sweet here, because they were ready for this, and prepared a number of surprises, which is why some Russian military complain that here, if we talk about historical parallels, almost the classic Vietnam War, when the enemy prepared a lot of surprises for them, that is the APU, what they are, I repeat, a lot of people are complaining now. Therefore, active hostilities continue on the eastern, southeastern outskirts of the settlement. Reports of any breakthroughs are not true. In other directions, such as Veliko-Novoselkovskaya, without any changes. There were shots on the Orekhovsky sector of the front today. I didn't take it out separately anymore. The attack, there was an attempt to attack from the Balka area, in the eastern direction, that is, an attempt to bypass a number of positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, which are located near the fortified area, that is, to break through to one of the forest belts to catch on, and then further north of the fortified area, which is under their control. In the direction of the forest belt, Russian troops managed to stop approximately in this area, so we do not fix any changes. And again stopped by what? Stopped by drones. Therefore, in a number of areas, they came to understand that drones play a significant role, and until there are effective RAP systems, there will be no effective offensive by armored vehicles. At the same time, look, there have been a number of reports that Russian troops are using new RAP complexes there. Sonya developed as practice has shown, well actually, they are not come ill-fought, already according to reports that there are. That is, at that time, I was skeptical about the news, that 1.5 kilometers begin to jam the signal, and in a radius of 4 to 400 meters, everything is completely jammed, falls into Pedron and so on. I then said that, well, in my opinion, it was exaggerated. As it turned out, yes, these characteristics stated by the Russian side are significantly, I would say 10 times exaggerated. Because not only does everything fall 400 meters, nothing falls from 40 meters there. And as practice has shown, where they used them, and where armored tanks were hit, there and from a meter, they are not so effective. And this is just a reference to the message that was from the representative of the Russian troops, who said that in 6 to 8 months, the RAP systems will be absolutely ineffective on the battlefield, and they need to prepare for this, that the UPU will not stand still, and a number of developments are being carried out that will allow them to naturally bypass RAP systems. And here is a reference to the article that I published, you can see in the Telegram in the morning. So, I don't have many posts published in the Telegram, so you can find very interesting ones about drones. They have now been developed. They have already passed tests. These drones are trained to change frequencies, very cool drones, and in general, we have a bet on drones with artificial intelligence determining when they are on them RAP works, and changed frequencies. That is, the remote control the drone will be interconnected, and I mean by the fact that the drone will command a change of frequencies, and not from the remote to the drone, so let's say, perhaps even earlier than the enemy assumes, this change will happen, when no matter what effective RAP, but they will lose that effectiveness which should be due to just the same frequency change, of artificial intelligence, which will understand how to act in a particular situation. Therefore, I have outlined the picture here. But you know, we need to say in a mirror way, that we must also prepare, that the enemy does not stand still in this industry. Naturally it will make every effort, to ensure that it naturally has this kind of drones, and accordingly, work ahead of the curve. But so far there are a number of statements from our side, that we are ahead of a number of issues, are precisely in the technological breakthrough. It is clear that the West is helping us, and this is very good, because it can significantly affect certain operations that the Russian command is planning, because, well, they have already shown that no matter what forces the Russian troops attack, today we state, unfortunately, partial success, but this is good, which is not a complete success, when they also attack a number of settlements stepwise, but face difficulties with drones and an inefficient RAP system on their part. This is the situation we have at the front by the end of today. Until tomorrow's broadcast, glory to the assembled forces of Ukraine. Be healthy.